As World War II was approaching, the German army was taking a serious interest in some bunker buster artillery pieces. They were looking west particularly. The French had developed the Maginot Line series of fortifications, and they needed a big gun with which to crack them open. As a result, contracts were placed with both Henschel and Rheinmetall, Henschel for 2 chassis and Rheinmetall for 2 guns. Henschel decided to take 2 of the VK 30.01 vehicles that had been created earlier. This was the lead up to the Tiger series. They extended them a little bit by about 2 meters, and that was simply to make room for the very large 12.8 centimeter cannon that Rheinmetall had come up with. The resulting vehicle was known as the Panzer Selbstverlaufet 5. More easily said to people like me as Sturer Emil. The vehicles, 2 of them were built, saw service both on the Russian front, and one was destroyed, the other captured. So we've been kind of lucky, we got a 50% success rate. One of the vehicles still exists and is sitting here today in Kubinka. Now, unfortunately, time hasn't been kind to the old girl, so there is nothing inside. As a result, we have another episode of Outside the Chieftain's Hatch. Crew was 5 people. You had the driver in the front left, gunner and commander in the front of the superstructure, and a radio operator and loader were at the back. The front of the vehicle is extremely sparse. All you have outside of the final drives are about 5 centimeters of armor, and the driver sits sort of semi-exposed but encompassed by an armored hood. In order to see out, he has a direct vision slit to the front and another one to his left. Other than that, he's completely reliant upon instructions from the TC. The engine was an 11.6 litre 6-cylinder Maybach, which pumped out about 310 horsepower, bringing this vehicle along at a blistering 25 kilometers an hour. Add to it 450 litres of petrol, and you ended up with a wonderful road range of about 150 kilometers, and cross-country that basically halved down to 80. If you compare the side of the vehicle between the Sturer Emil and the 3001, you'll see that Sturer Emil is a little bit longer, and also the road wheels are in a different sequence. So on the 3001, the first pair of road wheels, they were together. The second pair were the separated type. Well, Sturer Emil, they reversed it. They maintained the same interleaved suspension, but you started with the outer and then the inner. The other difference is that there are now 8 pairs of road wheels per side instead of 7. The sprocket wheel at the front remains the same as on pretty much every other German vehicle at the time. The tracks are a single pin dry type. There are 85 links per side, supported by 3 return rollers. Because of the extra ground contact length of the tracks, the steering gear had to be modified a little bit with a different gearing ratio to allow the vehicle to turn just as easily as it would with the shorter 3001 wheelbase. The 8 pairs of road wheels are on torsion bars. On the right-hand side, the road wheel arms are trailing. On the left-hand side, they lead. Road wheels all have tires on them, as does the idler wheel. And they still have the markings on them, so if you're curious about the size, the tires are made by Continental, and they are 700/98-550s. So who knows, maybe a local tire shop has a few. Come around to the left-hand side of the vehicle, I can see a vertical line. It looks like they added another armor plate just for the idler. But most importantly, we can see the leading road wheel arm on this side. All the road wheel arms on this side are of the leading configuration. Now, the US Army did try experiments in the mid-40s on Pershings as to whether or not these were a good idea, and the Army concluded no, they weren't. What they wanted to do was try to reduce the overhang on the front of their tanks. There are also bump stops on the first and last arms, and the suspension pretty reasonably supported the weight of the 36-ton vehicle. The gun is the 12.8 centimeter K40L61. It was developed by Rheinmetall from an anti-aircraft cannon. Absolutely lethal. The AP round would go at about 880 meters per second, and one of the 2 Sturer Emils, named Moritz, managed to kill a KV at about a mile, which, all things considered from the time, was actually pretty good. Now, the other nice thing about having an empty interior is that you can actually see the suspension. So all the torsion bars are free for all to see. The last 2 are especially strengthened to take the recoil of the 12.8. And you can see, because of the strange road wheel arm system, that one last torsion bar is way at the back. The other thing you can see easily here are the axles for the idler wheels. The last two crewmen are at the front of the vehicle, the gunner on the left has simple hand cranks for elevation and traverse. Traverse was kind of limited, he had about 5 degrees to the left and 7 to the right, but elevation was pretty reasonable at 10 and an excellent -15 for depression. His sight, his only sight, was a periscopic one. It went up through the slit in the casemate roof. On the right-hand side would be the commander, and he would have a binocular range-finding periscope. The only other thing you can see in here, because it's an empty vehicle, is the large frame mounting for the gun. For a thorough testing, the vehicles were sent to the two-way firing range, where they performed generally well, although it was an interesting caveat. It was recommended by the reports not to engage targets at under a kilometer, because frankly, the blast from the 12.8 was so huge that you couldn't spot your fall of shot, and thus adjust onto your target. Still, despite the positive reports, the vehicle was never entered into production. They ended up deciding was that if you're going to have a tank hunter with a fixed gun, give it armor. But if you're going to have a lightly armored vehicle, put it on a turret, make it more flexible, and by the way, it would be nice if you could dismount the gun. Well, those were the Waffentrager series of vehicles. As a result, the vehicle had a very short service life, and the story ends here in Russia. We'll see you on the next one. The resulting vehicle was the Panzer Selbstfahrerlafette 5. 3, 2. The Panzer Selbst... It's going to be one of those days. The Panzer Selbstfahr... Jesus. The resulting vehicle was designated the Panzer Selbst. Although there was one interesting caveat, the reports were such that it recommended... Oh, you gotta be kidding me.